There's not a lot of movies that can say that they're remaking a movie that's over 100 years old, but obviously Nosferatu can say that. But does a story this old work in 2024? Well, I'll tell you what I think. What is up, everybody? Welcome to Mad Blood, and the final big horror movie of 2024 is now out. 2024 is actually kind of an interesting year for horror for me, and kind of a tough year because not a single movie this year really stands out as my #1 horror movie of the year. Even my top 3 list, my top 10 list is going to be pretty hard to make. I'll have a video on that sometime in January, just my top 10 horror movies of the year. It's going to be a tough list, I can't lie, but I do think a lot of people will have this movie in their top 10 this year. So Nosferatu wasn't one of my most anticipated horror movies of the year, and honestly, after leaving the theater, if I had to guess before going into the theater kind of how much I would enjoy the movie, it's kind of exactly what I expected, which of course we'll talk all about and all the reasons with all of that good stuff, but with Nosferatu, right off the bat, I think where this movie really thrives, in my opinion, is just this world. Transporting us into this world that's very unforgiving, this 1830s era in Germany mostly. It's cold, it's unforgiving, everything looks incredible. We're bouncing around from different locations all over the place. And really just this era, this mid-1800s-ish time period for this gothic horror type of a movie. Of course, we've seen this iteration of this many times, but it's pretty damn perfect. This era just in general. There's a lot going on in the world during this time. There's revolutions happening all over the world. We're kind of on that back end of the plague, which they kind of intertwine in this story a little bit as well. But there's just a lot of things happening around the world. And it just really fits this era of like gothic or horror so well. And definitely one thing I think this movie does really well is we're not just stuck in one particular location for the majority of the movie. We're kind of going back and forth between different characters, between different locations, different tones kind of in a way. Sometimes it's daytime, sometimes we're with characters who are kind of having fun. Sometimes we're in like a totally dark, unforgiving scene, and we're kind of bouncing back and forth. I think sometimes, especially in this subgenre, some of these movies, they really just like beat you over the head with just pure darkness and just like this bleak setting, kind of usually at like a main castle that's kind of intertwined in the story in some way. But in this movie, that's not really the case. I do kind of wish they would have dove in a little bit more into the town and some other things like that around Orlok's castle, which I really liked. But yeah, speaking of locations though, when Nicholas Holt's character arrives at Orlok's castle, not to spoil anything or anything like that, because this will be a spoiler-free review, but when he arrives at the castle, just the way that castle is shot, the set design, the look of it, everything around it, the exterior shots. But in particular, when he shows up to the castle and the gates open and everything you're seeing right there, I'm bought in. I don't know if any of you out there play video games, but the game Elden Ring, I don't know, for some reason, I immediately got like dark, scary Elden Ring vibes, which was great. Now let's talk about the cast here for a minute. Lily Rose Depp, to me, after watching this movie, I was thinking to myself, man, she just feels kind of like the perfect casting for her character. She's Johnny Depp's daughter, if you're not familiar with her, but still, I don't know. There's just something about her character, the way that she looks, the way that she acts, and just how she navigates throughout the movie, especially at the end of the movie, all the stuff that goes down with that. I think she does a very good job in this movie. Just kind of, in a weird way, feels like the perfect casting for this movie. I also need to talk about Bill Skarsgård for a second as Dracula. Count Orlok. Just kidding. But, he's really no stranger to playing these dark characters. He went through tons of prosthetics to play Orlok in this movie, and, multiple, 6, 7, 8 hours, I read, something like that. And, of course, he's played Pennywise and some other characters, and he's very good in this. I'm interested to do some more research into, I know he did a lot of voice acting with his character to lower the voice and things. I'm interested to see how much he really did. Maybe he did everything with the character, which is kind of cool to see. But yeah, Skarsgård is great in this movie. I mean, I can go on and on about the cast. We don't need to do that too much, but everybody in this movie is very good. Nobody's going to stand out as distracting or just not that good in their particular role. Everybody's very, very good. If you haven't seen the movie yet, that's not going to be a problem for you at all. But one thing that's interesting about NOSFERATU to me is there's something weird about this movie that it's kind of hard to explain in words, but this movie kind of feels like it could fit in so many different decades of movie making in a weird way. I think Robert Eggers just did a great job of pulling off this. The movie almost has like an old look to it, of course, but almost like an antique look to it. But it's also modern at the same time. Of course, the story and the themes and everything going on, and it takes place in the 1830s, which helps with that, definitely. But it's very interesting and unique, and it's a hard thing to explain. Like I said, it feels like a movie that could have came out in the 90s or the 80s or even the 70s, but it also still fits very well in 2024. Now, one thing I will say, especially towards the end of the movie kind of feels like I'm sitting there in a theater watching a play instead of a movie in a little bit of a way. I don't know. There's just something about kind of the acting and everything that's going on towards the end of the movie, especially. It feels kind of theatrical at times. That's a little bit weird to say, but I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about. I don't know. Some of the acting and some of the things going on doesn't feel quite as natural as what you'll see in kind of the first half of the movie, in my opinion. Now, I get why that was probably done on purpose, and I get why that's all going down, really. But, to me personally, that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to like it, right? You can appreciate something and not love it at the same time. And now this is a little bit of a nitpick, but I feel like in the first half of the movie especially, the look of Orlok's character in particular is just kind of okay to me. I think they could have done a little bit of a better job with the character, particularly kind of the eyes of the character. I was really trying to hone in on why something looked a little off to me, and I feel like it's the eyes. Like they look a little too perfect, a little too shiny. Just it doesn't fit the rest of the nastiness of the character. I don't know, the face as well. Kind of feels like there's somebody just in prosthetics in a little bit of a way. But with that said, I mean, towards the end of the movie, especially Orlok's character, man, there are some scenes where I'm sitting in my chair, I'm like, wow, this looks incredible. This is really damn good. By the way, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't NOSFERATU essentially almost like a fan film of Dracula in a little bit of a way, since it's kind of like an unauthorized, unofficial adaptation of the character? Even the remake that came out in the 70s was kind of like Dracula mixed with Nosferatu's story a little bit. That's always kind of weird. I'd love to hear what you guys think about just this whole thing. There's even been debates, I guess, over the decades about Nosferatu, whether or not there's some copyright infringement with the story and all of that. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I'd love to hear what you all think about it. Now, back to my earlier point about how you can respect something but not necessarily love it. So with this movie, I liked it, but it's not necessarily a subgenre that I personally run to go and see when something new comes out in this subgenre, unless, pretty much everything is kind of lining up to kind of entice me to go and see the movie. Like who's directing it, who's going to be in the movie. I kind of look at it in a little bit of a way. For me personally, like with Westerns, Westerns, I'm usually kind of a little bit apathetic towards that genre. I like it without a doubt, but I don't really go out of my way to see those movies unless everything's kind of lining up and I just can't resist it. Like, a movie like Django, you throw Tarantino behind it, DiCaprio, Christoph Waltz in the movie, and I'm like, okay, I definitely have to see this movie. Or even a movie like 3:10 to Yuma, just to talk about more Westerns and things. But, it's like, okay, Russell Crowe and Christian Bale, holy shit. Okay, yeah, I'm definitely going to see this movie. Now, to me, this movie's definitely not on the level of those movies, but there was kind of enough here with the cast and some other things to kind of entice me to go see the movie. Plus, on top of that, I was hearing a lot of good things about it and stuff. But yeah, I kind of, in a way, look at it like Westerns for me. But yeah, Gothic horror as just a subgenre for me is not personally nearly as intriguing as something like slashers or zombie movies. But, if you love the subgenre, more power to you. There's a lot of great movies in the subgenre. It's just, for me, it's just really not necessarily my favorite. Now, to kind of wrap things up with NOSFERATU. So this movie, for me, it's not really a movie that I'll ever go back and make an effort to rewatch. But with that said, this movie is very well done. It's dark, it's unforgiving, and this movie looks incredible. And I can imagine that those that are in their grave that made the original movie, I mean, if they could, they would probably look at this as a pretty damn good remake of the movie from 1922. But anyways, everybody, thanks for watching my review of NOSFERATU. Let me know down in the comments what you thought about this movie. If you want some more content from me right now, check out one of these videos next to me. If you don't want to miss future videos, then make sure you subscribe. That is the best way to do that. If you want some more content that you cannot find anywhere but on Patreon, go ahead and check out my Patreon where you can join for free over there. But anyways, everybody, my name is Matt, and I will talk to you in the next one.